Is it ridiculous to believe in the resurrection, that Jesus of Nazareth, a first century Jew, was raised from the dead? Actually, in the Bible, St. Paul himself says, if Christ has not been raised from the dead, then your faith is futile. If for this life only we have hoped in Christ, we, of all people, are most to be pitied. In other words, for Christians, everything hinges on the resurrection. And if it isn't true, people should just feel sorry for us. And I think he's absolutely right. So I'm going to argue that there are 5 very good reasons to believe in Jesus' resurrection. Actually, 5 objections, and I'm going to show you why they're all wrong. Number 1, the symbolic myth theory. Some people say that the resurrection is just a symbolic myth, that Jesus didn't really come back from the dead, but that it's his cause that lives on. In other words, Jesus' death is a bit like the death of Mother Teresa or MLK. What's important then is that the things that he stood for continued to be lived out by his followers, but no one really believed that he was literally raised from the dead. Here's the problem though. No one dies for what they know is a myth. Yet we know that subsequent generations of Christians were persecuted and martyred for their faith. If someone threatens to execute you for what you know is a myth, you just say, whoa, hang on, wait a minute, I didn't mean it, I'm just talking symbolically. I didn't mean it literally, please don't kill me. Yet thousands of Christians died for what they at least believed was really true, that Christ was raised from the dead, physically and literally. Objection number 2, the hallucination theory. Another objection is this hallucination theory, which, as the name suggests, says that the disciples simply imagined that they saw Jesus. In other words, they were hallucinating. Well, that might seem plausible, but the problem is that such a large number of people saw Jesus. In fact, the Bible tells us that over 500 people saw the risen Christ after Easter Sunday. And as any psychiatrist will tell you, for that many people all to have the exact same hallucination simply doesn't happen. So, I don't think that one works either. Number 3, the stolen body theory. Some people claim that the disciples crept into the graveyard at some point during the night and stole Jesus' body. Well, this theory is incredible, and by incredible, I really mean non-credible, for 2 reasons. Number 1, think about how big the tombstone would have been. Basically impossible for just a couple of disciples to move. Secondly, the penalty for a Roman soldier who failed to guard that tomb properly was death. In other words, you guarded that tomb with your life. You didn't just take a nap. If you were so tired that somehow you did fall asleep, are you really not going to be woken up by the commotion of the disciples walking up to the tombstone, moving it, and then stealing the dead body? Come on. Theory number 4, the swoon theory. This one's actually quite amusing. It says that Jesus didn't actually die at all. Instead, he was drugged, he fainted, and so he only appeared to be dead. Well, that's very, very unlikely. Firstly, we know that the Roman soldiers were experts in killing, and if you were a soldier who failed to do your job properly, you were liable to capital punishment yourself. In other words, you made sure that you got the job done. The Bible also tells us that both blood and water came out of Jesus' side when he was pierced, which we now know is called pericardial effusion. That's the build-up of water around the membrane of the heart that happens when you die. No, Jesus was pierced in his heart and lungs, and he died. Another reason that I don't think this theory works is that if you saw a half-drugged, drowsy Jesus staggering out of a tomb, is that really going to be something you call a resurrection? Number 5, the reliability of the Gospels. This last argument questions the reliability of the stories of Jesus themselves. How do we know that these testimonies aren't just made up fiction? Well, any New Testament historian will tell you that these texts are some of the best attested documents in the whole of the ancient world, because we have many copies of them and they're very, very early. They are trustworthy biographies, more historically reliable than many other texts that we all accept as brute fact. So if we dismiss the Gospels as simply made up, then we may as well throw out most of what we have from the ancient world. Remember too that the testimony of women was seen as particularly unreliable, yet it's women that find Jesus' empty tomb in the stories. So think about that. If you were writing a story that you wanted someone to believe, it would be a very bizarre move indeed to include the witness of women. So when you think about all these objections to the resurrection and why they don't really work, it might just be easier in the end to accept the fact that the resurrection is indeed true.